Welcome everybody to the DCCA webinar. Tonight we're going to be talking about convention credentials with Jason Lemons. Jason is the NCGOP State Credentials Chairman. Jason, please tell us everything we need to know about credentials for conventions.
Lee, thanks for the opportunity. It's good to be here. Folks, I'm a very simple presenter. If you have a question, please ask. If you miss a question, at the end of this, you'll see my email. Feel free to send it to me. I am a longtime activist in Republican politics, but I'm not too long at this level. I've only been doing this for about 11 years. But having been chairman for about 5 or 6 the last 7 or 8, I've gotten a feel for what's good and what's bad, most importantly, what works and what we need to see. I have a 16-page slide deck that will bore some of you to tears. I recommend 2 cups of coffee because I brought 2 cups of coffee with me. On the slide deck, if you have a question about a particular page, write down the page. And if you want to wait until we're done, feel free to certainly ask questions as we get there. All right. Introduction of the committee. Who are we? What do we do? How can we help you? Well, it's very simple. There are 16 of us that are nominated either by our state chairman or by our local district chairman to be on this committee. There's a list of names on the right side. These are all the folks on our committee. Now, what do? Our goal is to do one simple job, to make sure every single person who is at state convention is supposed to be there. And to make sure that those who are not there are not able to vote. These folks are taking the time to learn the process and hopefully help you with questions that you have. What do? It's simple. We take all the data that you give to us and we make sure that we have all the data from your particular county to seat you as a credentialed delegation.
I don't need privacy.
The hard part is, know this, we're not here to hurt, we're here to help. The majority of what we do is actually help counties that have issues or questions or just don't understand the process. The majority of our time is helping counties, not making sure they don't get to go to convention or not making sure they don't have the number of delegates they're supposed to have. A little bit more about this in the following slides. Now, somebody asked me recently, what are credentials? Well, it's a very simple thing. Credentials is proving that those who want to attend and who do attend are allowed to attend. The simple 5 points are: you have to be a registered Republican in your home county and precinct as of January 31st, 2016. You have to attend your precinct convention or your precinct meeting, depends on what you call it, and your county convention in succession. Now, what happens if you can't go to your county convention? That's okay. What happens if you can't go to your precinct meeting? That's okay too. Just make sure that you, ahead of time, have sent a letter to your respective chairman to let him know you're interested in being a delegate. And make sure that you send that at least twice, once early and then once the day before your convention, to make sure they both have it in writing and an email so you can prove that they've gotten it. Believe it or not, we have had folks call and say, I tried to be a delegate, they didn't include my name, here's the email that I sent out, and then we tried our darndest to make sure they were seated as a delegate for whatever their county was. But if each person follows these simple 5 rules, you shouldn't have any issues with somebody being able to attend their convention and be considered as a delegate to the state convention. Now, a little bit about what we do. The tools we use. Some people ask, don't you guys have strange things you use or slide rules or formulas? And really the answer is no. We use the plan of organization, and I've got a link here, so if you go back and look at this later, you can just simply go to the link, but it goes to the plan of organization. And believe it or not, there's only one specific paragraph in the entire plan of organization that talks about conventions. It's only about 6 lines long. We'll look at it in a few minutes. Now, we also use the data you provide, forms, proof of convention, communications, things like that. Lots of forms, lots of important forms. We use registration lists. And these are several in number. The first one is, of course, the North Carolina Board of Elections voter registration database. We also used registration lists that you guys send to us. The people that you want to come to convention, the people that you want to be delegates and or alternates, and then registration lists from each county to see who was registered by what date and in what county. Same tools that mostly you guys use from the from each of your counties. Now, a couple of questions about why are we so worried? Why are you so serious? And we get this one a lot, folks. Why are you guys so much of a stickler for your rules? And it's simple. We have to be. We have to be serious because we have to provide legitimacy. If we're not legitimate every year with the same rules, then that's showing that we're not serious about what we do. We have to prove what we do because we're not the last ones to use this data this year. If you look at the bottom, notice we have National Convention this year. It's in Cleveland, Ohio. I hope you all can go. Unfortunately, we all can't go. It's based on 2 levels of membership. The first one is becoming a delegate from your district convention, and that's sometime in April. And the next way is to become a delegate at the state convention through one of the at-large positions. Well, if you want to be a national delegate, you got to go to the state convention. And to go to your state convention, you got to follow all these rules we've already talked about. So registration issues, attendance at a convention, of course, compliance. These are the reasons that we're serious. If we're not serious about what we're doing, folks, the media is not going to take us seriously about our activities when we get to November. So that's why we're serious. But we like to have a little bit of fun with it too. Now, requirements. You will get a letter in the mail pretty soon from your state chairman. And Hassan has got his first and second draft done. It should go out in the next week and a half. And then you're going to follow up the first week of February. And it's going to include a tremendous amount of data. And this is data that we use to generate your information. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you. County delegate list. Okay. I think I'm going to show you one of these if I can find my little forms. County delegate list. All right, this is Randolph County's list. Can you all see this form? Lee, can you see this?
Yes, I can.
Is it kind of fuzzy?
Can everybody see that?
I don't see anything.
I don't see anything.
Oh, you don't see anything.
I didn't see the slide.
I see a slide.
Well, then we'll go back to the slide. No worries. Quite all right. Can you see it? Can you see the slide okay now?
Yeah.
NCGOP requirements.
Lovely.
Good.
All right. So a delegate list and alternate list. So when you have your convention, at the end of your convention, you have to have what is called an open call to convention, and that is to go to your next level convention. So at your precinct meetings, you'll have an open call to go to your county. At the county, you'll have an open call to go to your district and your state convention. And at open call, you literally allow folks who are in attendance or who have made provisions to be considered as a delegate or an alternate. And the reason you don't have all of your packet information yet is because we can't generate these numbers until January 31st. That's the date at which we're able to see how many registered Republicans are in each precinct and in each county and, of course, across the state. But this delegate list comes from you guys, from the county chairman or the county secretary or whomever the county chairman delegates to complete these lists. They're important. A couple of things we've seen in the past. If you leave a name off, that person may not be able to become a delegate. So we have to be diligent in getting names on the list. Number 2, if my name is John Sr. and I have John Jr. and you just turn in John, we don't know which John you're talking about. So we have to be specific. In the event you're in a county that has 100 delegates and you have 105 people that want to go, then you can turn in only 100 names. The other 5 would become alternates. Some folks are concerned about that. I would be too. Unfortunately, there's just not enough space sometimes. You have to work that out at your county convention. Oftentimes, these things are done ahead of time to make sure folks know who is and is not interested in going. Padding list. Yes, yes, Lee.
John Lawson had a question, and we had talked about it earlier. What happens if someone cannot come to the county convention? How do they make sure that their name is entered in as a delegate?
Sure. Send an email communication to your chairman and any one other officer. It doesn't matter who, whoever, and someone you know. You may want to also copy your district chairman, and if you want to, you can copy me. Let them know I can't come to convention because I have something else going on, but I want to be considered as a delegate to the next level convention. So if you're at, you work on Saturdays, and your county convention is Saturday morning at 10 and you can't go, send an email to your chairman. Send 2 emails on different days to make sure that it gets through, and then make sure that they respond back to you. That way you have proof that you want to be considered. You have proof that they received and send something back to you. And let them know specifically what you want to be. Because if you get turned in just for state, but you wanted to go to district also, you have to make sure they know you want to go to both conventions. So be very specific in what you want.
And are the names of these people who are not present, is there a point in the convention where the convention chairman reads the names so everyone knows those people are delegates?
So it's supposed to be done towards the end of your convention, and each county does this a little bit differently, but most counties have their delegate request toward the end of their convention. Now, 2 very important things. The first one is you're supposed to read every delegate name and every alternate name, so every person in the convention hall has the opportunity to hear each name. Why do you have to do that? Well, not all of us have perfect vision, so we can't see. Not all of us are going to be there, so we have to be able to hear the names that are included. Also, if it is an open call, quite honestly, that's what it means. You are calling the names of the people that wish to be delegates. Most counties send in a list of people who are at their county convention, plus names of people that they think need to go. Unfortunately, we just don't have a lot of counties that have full boats anymore. Be nice if they did, but we just don't have that. In the event that you want to be a delegate and they are, then you may be considered an alternate because you're not at the convention at that time. As of last year, we only had 2 counties that had a full boat. That means all their delegates were present. So it's very rare that alternates don't get moved up. Very rare. And oftentimes that is based on geography more than it is anything else. So if we're in Wilmington, the folks in the mountains tend to go to Wilmington less. The folks in Wilmington tend to go to the mountains less because it is a 6-hour drive. Because we're going to be in Greensboro this year, it's central to the state. It's easy to get on and off the highway. We anticipate a pretty good crowd. So if you know of someone, or if you can't make your convention, make sure you plan ahead, send emails in. Also, you have county meetings coming up. You have precinct meetings coming up. Drop an email to all the folks that regularly go to your meetings and let them know, hey, if you can't go and you're interested, please let me know ahead of time so you can be considered for convention. And it happens a lot. In fact, we probably have to hear 5 or 6 counties each year with names that were left off simply because the chairman or vice chairman forgot to turn a name in. Good question. Thanks, Lee.
Thank you.
Each delegate's name has to be voted on, not individually, but collectively. That way, everybody in the county who sends a delegate to the state convention knows who is going. Same thing with your alternate, and they cannot be the same vote. They have to be a separate vote, one for delegates and one for alternates. Now, the hard part, each of these names has to be transferred onto a second list. So you have a handwritten list. Then your secretary or your treasurer or whomever you have doing your paperwork, they have to put all those names and their address and their phone number onto a state-generated form, state GOP. And then that's what we use to check delegates for each county. Same thing for your alternates. It's time-consuming. Here's a great example. I talked to the lady that did Wake Counties a couple of years ago. Her name's Donna. Donna's the former chairman. She's putting this together. You know, they send in 700 or 800 names. Can you imagine how long it took them to check the names and addresses and statuses of 700 names? You know, and then you've got Greene County, and Greene County, I think, did 10 last year. Lee, I saw you drinking your coffee, so I had to take one as well. County officer list. This is where it becomes interesting. Who completes the forms? Is it this year's chairman or last year's chairman? Well, we're not in an election year this year for county offices, but that doesn't mean that we won't have some turnover. Believe it or not, about 30% of counties have officers who have never done this before every year, not just in election years, but every year. For one reason or another, life gets in the way, or folks realize they just can't do the job they wanted to do, or they run for an office. So we have a lot of county chairmen, a lot of vice chairmen, a lot of secretaries that have never done this before. One of the things we have to have is an updated officer list every year. That way, in the event we have questions, we know who to call. Most importantly, we have an email to drop information to you, because we use a lot of email and a lot less phone calling now. 10 years ago, you couldn't rely on email as much because not as many people were using it. But it's our reliable tool now. Folks, it's much faster to use an email system than a phone system. If you work during the day, I can't talk to you, and I can't do politics at night. So if either of us are doing day work and night work at different times, we can't chat. Use the email. It's a lot faster. Requirement number 4, we have to have a newspaper clipping. Every county has to advertise. Now, this is where it becomes interesting for your bigger counties. Wake County, Forsyth County, sometimes Mecklenburg County. Sometimes they don't use newspaper. They use radio. And yes, that budget's very large, by the way. But they do advertising on their AM or FM radio stations. About 6 years ago, I was talking to Wake's chairman. Claude was telling us that they spent about $1,100 on a radio ads. And I thought, really? That's a lot of money. Then I said, why did you do that? Because it would cost them $700 to do newspaper, and they get a better covering of Republicans on radio than they do in the News and Observer. Mm-hmm. So they really have to weigh out the best bang for their buck. So they didn't send a newspaper clipping in. They sent in the list of radio ads that they had from the radio station. There's actually 2 radio stations, and that's considered legitimate. So it's not always newspaper, but it's almost always a newspaper clipping. And this shows, when was your convention? Where was your convention? Did you notify the public that it was a convention?
What about a Facebook posting that you post to all Republicans?
Unfortunately, we can't do that because not every Republican is on Facebook.
Okay.
And if it's newspaper, is considered general circulation. If it's good enough for bankruptcies, and if it's somebody's phone is ringing. If it's good for bankruptcies, and if it's good enough for wills and testaments, it's good enough for what we're doing. A couple of things, though, with a newspaper clipping. Please be sure that you're very specific. We had a county last year that said the such and such county dinner will be on day XYZ at time XYZ. It didn't say anything about an open call to convention. It just said it was a dinner. Well, nobody knew what it was. They only had like 6 people come.
Oh, dear.
And then they turned that into their convention, and we had to say, guys, you can't do that. You didn't have the word convention. The hard part, fee. Every delegate's name that's turned in, a $2 fee should accompany. Some counties, it's not a problem. Some counties, it's a big problem. Some counties pay for it. Some counties require the delegate to turn in a fee to go. That is really up to the county. There is a provision that says you cannot charge delegates to go to convention because it is considered the equivalent of a poll tax, because what you're doing at convention is going to vote. Most counties don't have a question about this. If you have a question about this, I'm not the one to contact legal counsel for the state party and let them explain that to you. But I think we've only had 2 counties in the last several years that really had a question about fees. And these were really fundamental and technical and not necessarily financial in nature. Nonetheless, if you send in 50 names, you got to send in 50 times 2 or $100. And that has to be received before a county can be considered for delegate alternate status.
Jason, this is Matt Arnold. I just want to ask your thoughts on this. I've been to a number of conventions where county chairs trying to be cautious about their budget will actually talk down the succeeding conventions and say, please only give me your name if you're really serious about going. What's your thought about that?
Twofold. The first one is we really should, I think it's bad to try and dissuade anybody from going, particularly if it's a simple financial issue. Unfortunately, the last 3 years, convention costs have exploded, and that unfortunately has to be passed on to the user. In other words, our rates have gone up because the rates that the state party is receiving have gone up. For instance, if you recall, a few years ago, we went to Wilmington, and that was the most expensive convention we've ever had. Not from our standpoint, but from the cost of the facility. And so we really were a bit cautious about that. The next year, mysteriously, we saw a drastic reduction in the number of people that went to convention because it was expensive. That's number one. Number two, if anyone is ever concerned about fees or about dissuading because of expenses, call the state party and see if there's something that can be negotiated or worked out. There's always something you can do. You can always find an angel, and there's always some group willing to help. Matt, good question. Unfortunately, it's county by county. I would hate to think that we've got counties that don't want to go to convention because of cost. I do know that with a $75 fee we had last year versus the $35 fee we had 2 years ago, a lot of people were very much put off with the drastic increase. I'm one of them, for instance.
Thank you.
Quite welcome. Did that answer your question okay, Matt?
It did. It did.
All right, transmittal sheet. Transmittal sheet is a 1.5-page document that is, folks in my line, it's a checklist. It is a checklist of things you have to turn in. Did you turn in your delegate list? Did you turn in your officer list? Did you turn in your alternate list? Did you turn in your newspaper clipping? Is your fee included? Most importantly, did you check off whether you were using the county or the NCGOP plan of organization? So we know which one you're using. And that's important because if you're using the GOP state plan of organization, we know what that says. But some counties add in nuances, and that's not a bad thing. For instance, the state says you have to have 2 meetings a year. But most counties meet more than twice a year. So Harnett County, for instance, where I live, has in theirs that they're going to meet monthly on the 4th Thursday, except November and December. So it's a little bit different. Well, that requires us to have a different plan of organization each year. That being the case, we have to check a box that says we're using the county plan, and then we have to include that. We don't send it anymore. We just send them an electronic copy now. But it's something you have to have. And if you don't have that, we're going to call and ask, which one are you using, so we can see if there are provisions that are specific to your convention activity. You can't be any more specific than what we have, but you can be specific on the things that you do during your convention or the way in which you choose delegates. It has to be open call. Each person's name has to be voted on, and you can't have any more than the number that you're allowed on your delegate list. But there are some counties that actually have a vetting process to become a delegate. Well, that's legitimate, but we need to know what that vetting process is to make sure that it's not discriminatory. So if you have all these things, they're all in order the first time, you'll never hear from us again except a lovely letter from me that says, congratulations, XYZ County, you are to be seated with this number of delegates. Thank you very much. Have a great day. And then I'll put a big smiley face on. Unfortunately, sometimes I have to send ugly letters too. All right, I think I'm stuck. Can you see this one?
Plan of organization wording.
This is all the plan of organization about credentials at state level. That's the whole thing. From that, we get all this activity. Very important part. Chairman, oh no, I'm kind of new to this thing, y'all, so kind of work with me. Chairman and secretary certify election of officers, committee members, delegates. In other words, you have to sign a piece of paper that says, hey, this data is correct. You have to use the state, it says the state credentials committee. We didn't create them. I can't tell you a story. Dodie Renfrew created these about 10 years ago, and we've been using the same ones ever since. However, we use them and they work. Completed credentials shall be sent to us, folks, very important, no later than 10 days following the date of your county convention. No later than 10 days. Now, what if you're Mecklenburg County, you're sending 800 names? Get busy. Unfortunately, the provision says no later than 10 days. Now, if we get it 11 days afterwards, are we going to rant and rave and scream? If you have 800 delegates, we're not going to rant and rave and scream. We're going to thank you for researching 800 names in 10 days. Postmark date will be used to determine compliance. In other words, you have to email it and you have to mail it. That's because some counties wait to the last possible minute. This year, you notice we have a reduced convention time. Our state convention is May the 5th. That gives us 1 full month less to do all of our research. So the quicker you get these to us, the quicker we'll let you know how many folks you're allowed to have. Let's see, copies of newspaper article notices in addition to a list of county and precinct officers shall be submitted to us and all applicable congressional district committees. Here's why. The information that you send to us is very similar to what you send to your district, and they're due at similar times. Unfortunately, the way it's working this year, district committees are having their district conventions are the 1st through the 30th of April, which they usually are, but the state is asking us to have those in the first 15 or 16 days of April. So counties are really going to feel the brunt of push this year to get all the data in as quickly as possible. So be ready, because your district chairpersons are going to begin to call you very soon about when your conventions are, what time your conventions are, and when can you get your items in. Chairman's packet. All right. Every year, the state chairman sends to you a large manila envelope full of stuff. This year, it's about 10 pages, plus a copy of some forms. It's a lot of data. What's in it? It's the call to convention. It's May the 5th. But it also has the dates and times that you can have your previous, or I should say predecessor conventions, your district convention, your county convention, your precinct meetings. All the dates are included for that. It also has all the allocations for your county and district delegate counts, all the way down to your precinct level. So it's very important to take a look at these and make sure that you don't get 75 people from precinct A and 4 people from precinct B, because you need to make sure they have the no more than the maximum allowed. It's 100 delegates, 100 per, no wait, it's 1 per 100 Republicans registered in the precinct, 1 per 100. That's right. Go back to plan of organization. I might be messing that up, but nonetheless, you don't get an unlimited amount. Now, do we have a lot of folks come to our precinct meetings? Very rarely do we have full boats there. Very rarely. In fact, most counties have them simultaneously to their county convention because it's pretty much the same people. And then you've got Wake County, who rents out Dorton Arena, the whole Dorton Arena, just for their precinct meetings, because they have as many as 1,100 names come out. What have I got going on here? There we go. Now, let's see. Minimum requirements. Minimum requirements to be seated. All that right there. If you can get these 6 things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 things, that's all you have to have. If you get it done right the first time, great. If you need some help, no worry. Just call us. That's our job. That's what we do. We are here to help you get all 7 of those things done. The hard part is the forms. The forms. Here's the forms. You have a county delegate and a county alternate list. Now, this is where it gets hard, folks. Each name that you submit to the state or the district convention should be credentialed by the county party. In other words, you have to make sure that they are a registered Republican no later than January the 31st, and that they were at their precinct and or county convention, or they made provisions to be included. If you check all of these things and all that data is correct for that person, then they can be sent in as a delegate in their name, and only then should their name be put on your delegate form. Why is that important? You would be shocked, and I'm going to say the word again, shocked, how many chairmen send in names of Democrats. They send in names of unaffiliateds, libertarians. Many years ago, we used to get them from the Ross Perot party when Ross Perot had his separate party back in the early 90s. So you would be surprised at the things that we get sent in. Or here's the John Jr. versus John Sr. Or if my name was Maggie Smith and I got married in January and I became Maggie Jones, but I turned in to the name Maggie Smith because that's what was there, and then I get and show my ID and it says Maggie Jones. Be very careful when you're credentialing each of your delegates and alternates on your list. What name should you turn in? It should be the name as it appears at the North Carolina Board of Elections website. The website has a way for you to check voter registration. It should be the same name and the same address. Now, there is a very small provision that says if you changed your precinct recently, and we can prove that, then they can be seated as a delegate. It's very rarely used, quite honestly, because most people don't move within 10 days of when they're going to a convention. Most folks just don't want to move in January. It's not a widely known time to move. But surprisingly, we do get a name or two each year about someone who's changed a precinct recently. It happens mostly with folks less than 30, particularly with college folks, because they move over the holidays from one dorm to another or from one location to another while they're in school, or they go to another school. Forms, county executive leadership. Why do we need to have that? Again, we need to know who your chairman is. We need to know who your vice chairman is. And extremely important, we need to know how to get in touch with them. You'd be surprised how many chairmen do not do these forms. They have their secretary or treasurer or their chairman from credentials do these. And then all they do at the end is sign their name to it. But, do they have time to check 800 names? No, they just assume it's right. Make sure we know who you are and how to find you. We're not the government and we're here to help. We're certainly not Big Brother. We just need to make sure we can get in contact with the person we need to talk to fix any errors we find. Because believe it or not, we do find errors. And sign-in sheets. A lot of counties don't like sign-in sheets, but they are a necessary evil. The best way to prove that you were at convention is to have your name on a piece of paper. That way, if something happens and your name is left off, how can we prove they were actually at convention? Two things. Did somebody see you there? Did you sign in? The easiest way is to sign in. And the easiest way to know what a person's name is as it appears is to have them sign it on a piece of paper. So if somebody walks up and they put Chip Smith on their sign-in sheet, that's not going to help us a lot, because I'm pretty sure that his mother 35 years ago did not name him Chip. It's quite honestly, he's a junior or a third. But how many Smiths do we have that are juniors or thirds? So that's why we need to know what their name is as it appears if they're going to go and vote. Forms to forms. At any time, if you have questions about forms, call State Party, talk to Katie. She is fantastic at this. Email me and we'll set up a time that I can chat with you. Contact your member from your district and they will help you. That's our job. We're here to help, not to hurt. Most importantly, we want to help you sooner than later, because the longer we wait, the more counties have issues, the more counties have conventions, and then we all get busy just like you get busy. Nice to have, but not required. These are things that help us answer questions, and we don't have to call you. All right, so let's go back. Chairman's packet. These are the things you have to have. These forms have to be completed and sent in. If life is fair, we'll get a few of these from you. Precinct meeting lists. Why do you want a precinct meeting list? It's very simple. If a person went to their precinct meeting but was left off other lists, we have a record that they attempted to do the right thing. Also, some folks can go to a precinct meeting, but they can't go to their county meeting or their district meeting. Immediate past officers. This sounds really strange, but the explanation is pretty smart. If you change chairman this year because the chairman of the county is stepping down because they're running for office, and the new chairman stepping up, the new chairman doesn't have any idea how to do most of these forms. And quite honestly, the new chairman probably didn't call the convention and didn't lead the convention. So if we have a past chairman or a past officer that has been doing this, then we'll be able to get some information from them. And believe it or not every county sent in the way they were supposed to last year. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. Who is your credentials chairman for your convention? And quite honestly, that usually is the only person we have to call because they usually have all the data that we need, and they won't have to ask lots and lots of people, lots and lots of questions, and then get everybody running around in circles, quite honestly, looking for the same simple piece of information. Every convention is different, and most of them go the way as planned. But believe it or not, some conventions, they have issues. They have problems. Sometimes it is a faction or a sect of the party that is trying to get something done. Sometimes it is, this is not a joke, folks. The power went out last year in January, in February at one of the precinct meetings, and they had to stop it and then had to have it again. If you remember last year, we had a freak ice storm in early March, and one county had to stop its convention, call it off, and then reschedule it. Well, I'd say that was a list. That was an issue that we had to deal with. So let us know some things that may have been going on that hampered people from getting to your convention or that hampered the convention from actually occurring. The last one is a copy of your agenda and adopted rules. Strictly put, that gives us a date and a time that you had your activity. We had a county last year that put 3 different advertisements in 3 different papers, but all 3 papers put 3 different times for the convention, which they were going above and beyond. The problem was the paper just goofed it up. So the easiest way for us to know what actually happened was what was listed on the agenda. And adopted rules. That lets us know if you had an open call, if you had a vetted process, or how you chose to get your delegates named. So sounds like we're being specific, and we are. That's just to help you guys get through this faster. Do we need these? No, but these are just nice to have to help the process. Again, if you have no issues and all your stuff comes through and there's no problems, then we're ready to go. We'll send you a letter that says, congratulations, you have XYZ delegates. If there's an issue, then we got to go do a little digging, and that's what all this data helps us do. Timing. When do we start? When do we finish? When can we turn this in? I'm sick of this. You can't do anything until after January the 31st. Quite honestly, that is the date of which we have a snapshot in time. That's when we consider Republicans in your county a potential legitimate delegate. So on January 31st, call your local board of elections. Say, hey, I need to pick up a list of all the registered Republicans in my county. In fact, many of you have the ability just to call and say, hey, email this to me. Wake County can't do that because they have more than Excel can handle. They have to get like 2 or 3 CDs full of information because there's so many. Harnett County, we get it on one sheet because we've only got about 20,000 names, so it's pretty easy for us. Second thing, February through March, precinct meetings. Why is that? Well, if you have a separate precinct meeting, it's February 1st through 29th. Yes, 29th. It is a leap year. So we do have the option to have your precinct meetings, if they're separate from your county convention, February 1st through 29th. or you can have them with your county convention. If that's the case, it's March 1st through 31st. Now, this year, the state party is asking if it's possible for you to have your county conventions as early in March as possible. Well, the good news is, as long as it's after the ACC tournament and it's before the finals, all of us active basketball fans have something, we're good with that. The downside is when we compress them together, that makes it so that the state party can't go to as many of them as they want. So it's going to be a happy medium of have your convention, we'll try to get there this year. The hard part, though, is making sure you get the data into us in a timely fashion. And again, all materials are due at NCGOP 10 days after the completion of your county convention. Now, some folks say as long as I have it emailed by the 10 days, that's good. And unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case because some things you can't include electronically. You can scan them, but we do need that hard copy. So just do your due diligence and get your items in as quickly as you possibly can. Does that mean that we won't seat you? Not necessarily. It's very rare that we don't seat someone who is doing due diligence to try and get their stuff done on time. Some counties are a little bit difficult to deal with, and they play dirty, and they hold things as long as they possibly can. And we've had a couple that have not been seated in the past few years. Quite honestly, they didn't deserve it. Is that rare? Very rare. In fact, it's twice in 11 years, I think, that we've actually voted not to seat a county. Now, this is the fun stuff. I was asked this recently. What do y'all do? I mean, why do y'all need all this? Well, we do check every single name for a delegate or an alternate. We make sure that the count submitted is equal to or less than allotment per county. You'd be surprised how many counties send in 5 or 6 or 7 names more than what they're supposed to send in. And then we have to figure out, okay, some of these got to be alternates now. How do we figure this out? And usually we call the chairman and say, look, you got a problem here. You need to fix this. Because it's not fair for us to say this person deserves to be a delegate and this person deserves to be an alternate. But we do make sure that each name submitted is correct. And yes, we do check the registration of every single name. That's how we figure out what their party is. And yes, we get probably 50 or 60 names a year that are turned in that are not Republicans. But they went to the Republican convention and they honestly want to be delegates, which is good. The downside is we can't seat them. We review the advertising and make sure that the dates are correct. We review any issues you have. Now, what is an issue? If you didn't turn in a list of names correctly, or the names you turned in included something that was not correct, or it wasn't signed, or it was sent in late, or they didn't send money in. Let's see, what's a really good one? Oh, this is a good one. They send in a partial list, and then they send a separate mail that has a second list, and then they send a third mail that has a third list, and they want us to put them all together, but the names don't match, or a name is on all 3 lists. We got that last year too. You would think that it would be pretty easy. You take all the names you have, you vet them, you send them in, and they're all correct. And unfortunately, it's not that way. And then our job after that, it's simple. We either accept or we deny the credentials that are submitted. Now, we do this 2 ways. The first one is consider the county as a whole. If there are no issues, the county's seated and there's no big whoop. If we get names of folks that are not Republicans, or they are registered in a county that they don't live in, or they are registered at an address that is different, or they have a different name now, then we may accept a portion of your credentials and then request information on the ones that we have questions about, so you can go ahead and let folks know if they're going to convention. Why do you do that? Hotel rooms run out very, very quickly, and we want to make sure that as many people as possible have the option to be at the hotel they wish to be at. So our job is to deliberate as quickly as we can and get letters out to the chairman that say, your delegation has been seated, we look forward to seeing you, and then you can let your delegation know, yes, everybody was accepted, go ahead and get your hotel room. But unfortunately, that's not always the case, and we have some folks that are either denied or their name is withheld until we can get other information. Sad, but unfortunately, that's the way it works, particularly this time because folks are already gearing up to want to go to national convention. They're already lobbying state chairman. They're already lobbying the national committee man and committee woman. They're already lobbying their county chairman. In fact, I had somebody call me up recently and say, hey, I want to go to national convention. I'm like, and what's your name? And why do you want to go? Who are you? So it's becoming a pretty big to-do this year. It's supposed to be. County convention is a lot of fun. State convention is a lot of fun, but national convention is an absolute hoot. Why do we have to do all this work? Well, it's simple. To make sure every person on the voting floor at the convention is supposed to be there. Hickory, many years ago, 96 or 97, Hickory, we had convention. It was 95. And there were two guys on the floor that had credentials from the year before, and they looked the same, but they were not supposed to be there because they were not really delegates. So our job is to make sure that never happens again. So it's simple, to make sure every person on the voting floor at convention is supposed to be there. This is my favorite one. Who remembers Mr. Bill from Saturday Night Live?
Yes.
Oh, no! What do I do? Something's wrong. Well, don't panic. Don't panic. Just contact GOP. Contact your district credentials member. Contact me. Let me know what the problem is. You'd be surprised. Every Saturday in March, my phone blows up because people are calling me while their conventions are going on. This happened and we don't know how to fix it. Don't panic. Calm down. We'll fix it. We'll do our darndest to fix it. As long as everybody is doing the right thing, nothing to worry about. But make sure that you do contact who you need to contact. I'm not giving you all these names because you'll get them in your chairman's packet, okay? It'll come in the mail to you very soon. Accept or reject. There's two outcomes. Congratulations, your county's been seated, or I'm sorry to inform you that blah, blah, blah. Now, the first one is great. The second one is not all bad. Sometimes you're not seated because you were a month late. Sometimes you're not seated because you didn't send in everything that we need and we can't verify your credentials. Sometimes we can't seat you because the names that you sent in, we don't know who they are. We had one county send in 4 names a couple of years ago. 2 of them were Democrats. Like, really? Of all the Republicans in your county, you sent in 4 names and 2 are Democrats. That being the case, they didn't have an actual accepted true county leadership because the vice chairman and the secretary were Democrats. So they didn't have a number of party officers to be considered a legitimate county.
What?
So, we had to call back and say, y'all need to go fix this very, very fast. That's easy, right?
Absolutely.
So, that didn't turn out too well. You can't even see the comm on there. Oh, no. So, fix that. No worries. So, how do I get my face back up there?
Oh, you have to un-X your over the video icon.
Un-X the over the video icon.
Go to Jason.
I got you.
Now, maybe ask to start video. There you are.
All right. So I got a couple of more things I want to show you. Can you see this?
I don't see anything but a black screen. Does anybody else see anything?
All right. So how do I show?
So on the bottom of the page, it says share screen.
Bottom of the page is
If you put your cursor on it, you'll see share screen.
Green on mine. If the share screen is green, that helps you find it.
If you put your cursor on the bottom of the screen, it will just sort of appear, share screen towards the middle.
I'm getting nothing.
Oh.
All right, so we're going to call that operator error. It's quite all right. All I was going to do is show a couple of forms. Yeah, all I want to do is show a couple of forms, but I think it's okay. All right, so folks, I will take some questions.
Jason, this is Mark Cronmiller's wife, Pat.
Hey, Pat, how are you?
I'm great. I have a question. When the delegates are signing in, okay, they sign in when they come in. How do we do the people that want to be delegates or alternates but don't come to our convention?
So, well, they have to be vetted the same way. So, say I'm Harnett County's. I'm going to Harnett County's convention, and at the last minute I can't go. So I sent an email to Angus, our new chairman, and I sent an email to Carolyn, our vice chairman. So look, I can't be there at the last minute. I figured out I can't go, and I need to be considered. They should, at that point, go ahead and print out a copy and create a list of names. Now, in years past, particularly at district conventions, those names get left off, and it becomes a bit of an aggravation. During sign-in, unfortunately, their name can't be submitted at the sign-in sheet. That piece of paper with their information on it, say a copy of the email, it should be submitted by your chairman in lieu of a signature on that form. That way you have a record of them wanting to go. Now, Pat, the problem we have is, what if you have a full boat that shows up to convention and there's not enough names for those folks? Try and get them in as alternates is the best you can do.
Got it. Thank you.
Good question. And that comes up a lot. Further questions?
What about unaffiliated Democrats, reporters? They all want to come to the convention. How do you separate them from the voting members?
So most counties create a voting area and a non-voting area, and they're a gallery, if you will, and they're allowed to sit in the gallery. Unfortunately, well, not true. Fortunately, we have some folks that want to be active in the Republican Party. Unfortunately, they're just not Republicans yet. So we have to say, hey, I'm glad you're here. I'm excited that you're here. It's great you're here. Unfortunately, we can't seat you as a delegate. What we want to do is, hey, here's a voter registration change form. Go ahead and fill this out and stick around with us today. Take part, and as soon as we can, we'll turn this in and let you become active.
And so since it's so important to have the legal name, shall we advise county chairman that on their sign-up forms, like on their Eventbrite things that they're putting out right now for people to sign up for conventions, on it, they shouldn't just say, put your name, they should state, put your legal name that you use to vote. And
yes, ma'am, your voter registration name, as it appears on your voter registration card.
So that I think would help the credentials chair tremendously if from the start they get the right legal name.
Very much so. Then the person who's doing your credentials for your county, they just have, it's almost alphabetical at that point. Good question, Lee. Further questions?
Hey, Jason, you mentioned earlier about the precinct meetings being held in February. We actually scheduled ours in January. Is that an issue?
When in January?
Starting next Monday, January 11th.
All right. Is this the county that has roving precinct meetings?
No.
Okay, so there's one county that has like 4 dates, and they do it around the county. That way, the county hosts them, but they go to 4 different locations. Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, if that's what you mean by roving, yeah, we actually have quadrants in the county, and we are holding 4 of them.
Yeah, that's what. Okay, so I'm talking about the same county.
Yep.
It's a question mark. Here's why I say that. The chairman's letter this year says February 1st through March 31st. The problem is your meeting actually ends, and you have open meeting that starts in January and ends in February. I would call Katie and ask her to give you some clarification on that.
Okay.
because last year you guys did this. In fact, if I remember, weren't you one of the groups that had a problem with the weather? And one of your meetings had to be postponed?
Not that I recall.
Okay, one county had has roving, and they had a big problem with weather, and they had to call one off that was scheduled and actually advertised in the paper.
Yeah, we didn't have that problem.
Well, congratulations. Yeah, give Katie a call and ask her for a little information. She may need to call and get a little information on that because they're supposed to be done February 1 through March 31st. Having them early, the problem there is you don't actually know who's changed their registration by January 31st. Good question, though.
I have a question. My name is Emmanuel Jarvis, County Chairman from Durham County. The question that I have is if you have people that are emailing stating that they want to be seated as a delegate and you're already full, do the people that actually show up to the convention, do they trump those who send in the email and do not show up?
They should. They should. I can't say that because I'm not in your county. That's a convention vote, but they should because they took the time to come and to be there. Now, that doesn't mean that a person who can't come is any less committed. They may be out of town. They may be sick. They have other issues. But as a general rule, precedence goes to the folks who are actually in the convention hall on vote day.
So if it's a very active person and really it's just a phenomenal circumstance, they can't be there. So the convention can vote on which ones should be delegates and which ones should be alternates?
Emmanuel's point is good. Here's a great one. What if Patrick McHenry or Tom Tillis or Renee Elmers or Richard Hudson is in Washington for a vote? They should probably be considered an active Republican, but they're in Washington. Or what if your National Guard duty is going on? That's a pretty legitimate reason to be away. And that happens a lot. National Guard is one of our bigger issues. But Emmanuel, the answer is whatever your county presumes. But as a general rule, it is you do give a weighted value, I suppose you could say, to the folks who are in the building.
So it's the precinct. So the precinct meeting. So they would have to get the list from the chairman of the people in their precinct who sort of sent the email in saying, "Hey, I want to be a delegate, but I can't be there." So the names. Otherwise, how would they decide who should be a delegate and who should be an alternate?
If they do their job and they properly send their information in, it should be included. If they're a longtime activist, they know most of the rules already. They also know who to send things to. The downside.
So the precinct meetings, though, should have that information, not just the chairman.
The answer is yes, they should, if they do things properly.
Okay.
The hard part there comes in, like our previous speaker mentioned, if they have their precinct meetings on different days, it does get a little more difficult than in, say, Harnett County, where we have our precinct meetings and our county convention. They're all on the same day. Wake County is another example. They have their precinct meetings a full month ahead just to make sure they have enough time to get their names ready for their county convention. Mecklenburg County does something similar. Well, they didn't last year, but in years past they have. Emmanuel, good question. Thank you.
Jason, this is Franklin. One other question for you here. It sounds like we're trying to give every opportunity for delegates and alternates to participate all the way up to, like you said, sending an email just prior to the county convention taking place. I just happened to notice in our POO, and this could be something we need to change, it sounds like, but we've actually have language in here that says that no delegate or alternate shall be added to the credentials list following the adjournment of the precinct meeting.
That is at the county level, or is that at the precinct level?
This is at the precinct level.
All right, what page are you on there? Excuse me, what section are you in there?
It was also in the form that you had at the beginning of your presentation, so I think it's a...
Yeah, I'm in Article 2, precinct meetings, page 3.
Okay, check county convention, and it should say something very similar. It should have very similar language at the next level too. But what you end up having is a call to make sure that every county does this. Let me rephrase that. Every county I've been to has done this. You have an open call at the end unless you're already full. Like last year, I think Greene County or Jones County, I can't remember one or the other. They only had 10 delegates allowed because they're not a very strong Republican county. And they were full. And they also were full with alternates. And then they had 2 people come to state convention that wanted to take part. I'm like, this is fantastic. The downside is there's no room. And, you know, they were at their convention. They were at their county convention. They just weren't originally planning on coming. And then they were able to, and unfortunately we couldn't seat them. Felt kind of bad. They understood and they took part as much as they could. But nonetheless, you know, they were full and they were not able to be seated. Did you find that section, Frank?
It was in your slide as well in the beginning of the presentation.
Yeah, I'm trying to reduce down what I've got.
No, I can get with you after the call. I can't find it.
It's in that one there. No delegates or alternates shall be added to the credentials list following the adjournment of the county convention.
Yeah, precinct meeting has the same language. And then district also has the same language. So what they're doing is making sure they're covering all their bases in the same sections. But to go to county, you have to have gone to or have taken part in precinct. To go to district or state, you have to have taken part in county. One builds upon the other.
Right, but the intent is not freeze anybody out after a precinct meeting if somebody decides they want to be a delegate in the county or, you know, to go to state, right?
We certainly don't want to freeze anybody out. We want everybody to take part if they're able to and they're legitimately doing what they need to do to become a delegate. You do have folks. Last year we had 2 from Greensboro, Guilford County, that were actually living in Wake County. And they registered in one and they moved to the other. But all of this was done after January 31st. And they couldn't figure out why they couldn't be active. I said, we can't prove you were Republicans before January 31st. But we were, but we couldn't prove it. Not only that, but you moved in the middle of it. So they couldn't be included. And the bad part is they worked for one of the state representatives and we still couldn't seat them. Because, again, they weren't registered properly and they tried all this after their county convention was over.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Now, someone who's not a delegate, they can still go to convention, they just can't vote. Is that correct? Or are
that
they
is
not
correct.
allowed
That
in
is
a room
correct.
at certain points, or they can pretty much do anything except vote?
That's correct.
So nobody should feel like they can't go to convention. They just may not be able to vote.
You can buy the meals. You can go to see the speakers. You can go to the workshops. You can certainly take part in all the other festivities. You just can't be on the floor to vote.
Okay.
Further questions?
Well, if there are no more questions, thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate the time you took with us. And we know who to call if we have any questions about credentialing. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Jason?
At the end of this, there's my name, Jason Lemons at AOL.com. If you have a question or a comment, or better yet, a suggestion, send it on. We're good about those.
Are the slides available?
I will send those to Lee and let her post them where she needs to post them.
Thank you.
I'll send
Appreciate
it
it.
out.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'll send it out in the next DCCA newsletter along with the link to this webinar. Thank you so much, Jason.
Good, thanks. Appreciate it. Good call.
Have a good day.
Thanks for
Thank you,
joining us,
Lee.
everybody. You're welcome.
Thanks so much.